is the Friday Night with Erdinger. I'm Beth Lindop, standing in for Neil Atkinson today, and I'm joined by the lovely Phil Blundell, Andy Heaton, and Mo Stewart. We're at the Reds Bar on Exchange Street in the heart of the city centre to talk all things Liverpool and Manchester City. But before we get into that, I want to just touch on something that happened this week, a video that the club put out. It was the Reds Roundtable, which they've done a few times with various different players and people connected to the club. And this week they did one with Arne Slot, Sporting Director Richard Hughes, and the CEO of Liverpool, Billy Hogan. Mo, I'll come to you first, because to me it was less about what was actually said in the video and more the fact that the video was put out there in the first place that sent a bit of a message.
Agree. I think that if you're planning to change your manager, doing a video with the sporting director and him all playing Happy Families the day after the transfer window closed doesn't really scream you're on your way out, son, does it? So they're aware of the discourse that's going on around them. They're aware of lots of things that probably need to be quietened down if you want to help Liverpool get to where they want to go between now and the end of the season. So it was probably an attempt to try and say, look, everybody gets on, everybody's on the same page. You might not disagree with all of our decisions, but everyone in this table is all on the same page. How successful it will be, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, Phil, it did feel like a bit of a pointed message, the fact that came out there. And there's obviously been a lot of talk about Richard Hughes over the past couple of months, and certainly in the January transfer window, people saying that you would like a bit more transparency. That's something obviously Neil's called for, but I think that is a pretty popular opinion. Obviously, it wasn't. He didn't come out and necessarily explain why Liverpool didn't sign a defender in the summer, and in the January window. Sorry, it wasn't necessarily like a grilling. Obviously, it was club controlled media, but I still thought it was quite nice to just see him, hear from him, and just to see that person and that connection that's, I guess, between the people behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people probably quite surprised where he's got a Scottish accent. I don't think a lot of people even knew what he sounded like, genuinely being serious, just because he's sort of very behind the scenes and very sort of, not out there and not saying this, that and the other. So it was quite interesting to hear him speak.
He's got a bit of a mad accent, I think.
Yeah, he's partially Italian, isn't he? And he's partially Scottish.
You can tell there is like a little bit of an Italian.
Whilst also living a long time in England as part of his working life. Yeah. So there's a lot going on.
He absolutely never put that accent on at all, though.
I don't know. There was a lot going on, wasn't there, in terms of it was some interesting stuff in terms of how they sort of came to meet, how they get on, how they see football. I thought it was quite interesting when he talked about how when Hughes was Bournemouth sporting director and they brought footballers to him and he was like, this is the fourth Feyenoord player and maybe this is just the manager. And eventually, I think he said they signed two of them, one via Leeds, but the other one was Senesi, who's been reasonably fine for them at the centre back. But it gave me that he had an insight into what he was and knows what he's about. And if they're saying this footballer's good and then he's looking and go, well, actually, this manager's also quite good, it does mean that it wasn't just something that he sat there down last summer and thought, right, what are we doing? Because I think Senesi's been there, 3 years now, something like that. So it does tell you this is a long period thing, which does give you sort of more thought that this isn't this. They're not going to be short-termists on any decision they make with regards to the future of the manager. Everything will be well thought out, and I think that's ultimately how it should be. I don't really want someone who looks at a bad run of form and goes, right, well, we have to change the manager in charge of the football club. It might be that there is an argument to do so in certain situations, but as a default, I just don't think that's a particularly good way. It's like, oh, we've lost a few games, get rid, change it, bring someone else in, because especially mid-season, you're sort of doing a thing where it's like, oh, well, we've got to get someone to do the rest of the season, and they've got to fit, and then they've got to be good for the long term. You sort of you could potentially get into a cycle where you just keep appointing the wrong person, you have to keep doing it, and then there's consequences of that as well, which in terms of footballers look at it and go, maybe not quite as sure about things. And so I quite like the structure is fairly settled, and I feel like nothing that they do will be rash, and that's sort of what I want from people in that position.
Yeah, there will be some people being cynical, Andy, because it has been put out there. Completely. There will be people being cynical, and I understand that. Ultimately, it's a piece of media that's been put out by the club, and it's their prerogative to deal with things in a certain way. You know, it's never going to be a hard-hitting interview that might be the case if Richard Hughes sat down in front of 10 journalists who've got, you know, burning questions to ask him. I suppose over here the sporting director does take more of a backseat. And, you know, compared to European countries, we do tend to see a lot of German media in particular. There's a lot of input from the sporting director. Where do you stand on that? Would you like more transparency, more sort of open lines of communication between the media and sporting director, or do you think that's something that should just be kept behind the scenes?
Well, first off, never underestimate contractual obligations to your biggest sponsor.
Yes.
Is what I would say.
But also, on
what
contractual
I-
obligations, by the way, people go about sporting directors not doing press conferences and managers doing press conferences. The manager's not doing it through choice. The manager's doing it because they have to.
Yeah.
Do
The
that.
sporting directors are going, well, I don't have to do it, so why am I doing
Exactly.
it? So,
I wouldn't
No,
do it. I
of
wouldn't
course
do it
not.
either. But I do agree in so much as that. Listen, if there needs to be a kind of agreement somewhere, or there needs to be a discussion about if the manager's got nothing to do with the transfers, either don't ask him the transfer questions, or you make the person who's responsible for, or the person who can answer that question, available for comment on it. And that's kind of where I am with it. On the interview again, I can't believe you. Me, a cynic.
That was totally coincidental.
So yeah, I mean, you're looking at the deck. They can't stand each other off camera, allegedly, and it's amazing what a lens can do for you. But no, I thought the mannerisms. Joking aside, either they're both very, very good actors.
I think they are.
And I don't think I don't think Arnestock could tell an untruth if he tried, which hasn't done him any favours.
yeah, people do not like reasons and the truth, do they?
No, they don't. And reasons, excuses, and so on and so forth. No, what bits I haven't seen all of it, full confession. But what bits I've seen, they do seem to take away from me. Forget about the words. It's how comfortable they do seem in each other's company, and how relaxed they all were. And yeah, it's been a useful tool to kind of calm everyone down a little bit, because we all know how a small piece of misinformation can spread like wildfire at the moment, and any kind of perceived slight, even if it's not because you take one part or one line from like a massive statement, you can make anything of it. Kind of like statistics in that way, you can isolate a small bit of statistics to try and prove a point, and you prove the opposite with a different set. I'd love to know when it was filmed.
I was thinking this.
It was certainly after the draw at Arsenal, because that was referenced in it. So it's some point in the last few weeks.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think it speaks to what Liverpool are planning for, and it may not necessarily align with what the fans want immediately. Listen, it goes without saying this season hasn't gone to plan. And I've tried to back the manager all the way. I think he's made some massive mistakes, more with what we were talking about then about keeping his counsel maybe a little bit. And there's been some baffling decisions off the pitch, and I think he's damned by what happened last season as well. A little bit. I think the accepted knowledge, or the accepted kind of commentary around the start of last season from day one is top four, and then we'll go from there. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah,
100%.
I think that's fair to say. So if you reverse the 2 seasons, this sounds mad, by the way, and I'm not trying to play games here, but if this was his first season and we're still in with a good shout for fourth place, you're going, all right, first season, all right, we'll see where we go, and then lead in. But football's not like that.
No, I still think it would have been annoying if it was Arsenal at the top of the league rather than Man City at the top of the league, because you think, well, this is the chance when City are down to go for it. But I agree with you. I think it would have been easier. I think the funny thing is that he mentions that in reference to the players, in terms of they were asking him about motivation and how you kind of get them going and stuff. And he mentioned the fact that it was actually harder for them to motivate them after they've won the league, because you're talking about trying to get into the top four and all that kind of stuff. Well, these are players who are used to winning the league, used to challenging for league year in, year out. And we've seen this with this group. In fact, the last year they had a down year, 22-23. It was almost after the year where they'd nearly done the quadruple and didn't quite do it. And then they realised they weren't going to win anything pretty early on. and it kind of just started to drift a little bit. And I feel like you kind of saw that with Man City last season as well, because they had their big blip quite early on. So it was obvious that they weren't really going to get to where they normally get to. And it's hard for players when you're used to being the very best to then be almost as good or almost good, sort of.
I think that the Arsenal thing's a brilliant point, because I think that feeds into the frustration a bit, because Arsenal actually quietly haven't actually been that good. But they've been allowed a free run. Every time that they've kind of slipped, City haven't really capitalised on it. And we don't, and this is going to sound crazy in the context of everything that's happened, but I don't think if this squad had if they were a bit more lucky with injuries, and then if a couple of decisions were slightly different, and we defended a little bit better, and there's 3 different things, so you stack up. But I don't actually think it'd take much for this Liverpool squad as it is, never mind any additions,
I agree with you.
to match what Arsenal have done. I think that's a frustration. If Arsenal were playing scintillating football and flying and looking brilliant, then I think would be a little bit more accepting of it. And I can't say this without sounding bitter about Arsenal, but they're not playing particularly great football.
It's not like watching Manchester City 2017 to 2022.
No, it's not. I remember coming off the 18-19 City game, and City ended up beating
One
us.
of the best games of football that's probably ever been played, legitimately.
And all you could do was applaud both teams, and like, fucking hell, that was fucking great, that one. I'm gutted.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ, what have I just watched?
Similar with the one in the 21-22 run as well,
Yeah,
where we
with
drew
Sam.
2-2. That was an
Yeah.
unbelievable game of football. There's a lot of the levels being so high. One thing I was quite interested by was when they sort of mentioned that Hogan is there for the long term, Slot's there for the short to medium term.
He's focused on the short term,
Hughes is
straddling the two, kind of.
Yeah, it was a bit different, but I suppose when you put it that way, it sort of tells you that a Slot can only do what the others sort of enable him to do in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that the makeup of the squad is probably that was left for him in the summer wasn't awful, but it wasn't a finished squad, was it? In a way that when you've won the league, you would expect to look at a squad and go, "This is complete. This is finished." This one, it had gaps, it had obvious areas of improvement in it, and it still does. And the Jacquet signing is one of those areas, for example, that be looked at. But it does tell you that it's all it's everything marrying up. It has to be a number of people doing their job right for everything to work properly. And it's not necessarily just like, I don't think this season is one person doing their job badly. I don't think it's just simply a case of, well, the manager's picked this team and it hasn't worked. I just don't believe that.
Hughes alluded to that though, didn't he, when he was talking about his job is to put him in the right position to do things, and things haven't gone as well as they'd like them to do. So your point about Liverpool winning the league, and you think, well, that should almost be as perfect a squad as it is. That's why I always I'm a little bit strange when people talk about how Liverpool spent 500 million quid and all this money, because like, if the squad was that good, then they wouldn't need to spend that much money. The fact that they spent that much money tells you that there's lots that needed to be done, and you're changing so much, it's not always going to go right. But what I took from that, I really was interested in the way Hughes was talking about, like you say, the short-termism is what Arnie does day to day, week to week with the squad.
Because that's his job.
And that's his job. And he said that is definitely his remit. But I have opinions, and it's about when I choose to give him those opinions.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that Richard Hughes has no idea or doesn't care about the picking of the team and the tactics and all those kind of things. He has opinions of it, but he knows that ultimately that is Slot's responsibility. So that says to me that they do have a good relationship, because Richard Hughes doesn't feel like he can't talk to him about football. And Arne Slot still knows that ultimately when it comes to picking the team, the buck stops with him.
Yeah, I think what I took from the video, and I think something like that was needed, because it has felt a little bit like, obviously not privately, because Slot has always said that he's maintained a dialogue with Richard Hughes, but it has felt publicly, and it's often the case in English football, that managers are sort of out on their own a little bit. And listen, I agree with Andy. I think some of the stuff that the manager has said maybe hasn't helped him. I don't necessarily think everything that he has said has been meant in the way that it has been interpreted, but he still said it. And so I do, I understand fans' frustration with that. I think what I've taken issue with this season has been the way that the manager is spoken about with a a lack of respect, I think. And I think it's totally fine to have opinions on the manager and on footballers. Absolutely, that's what we're all here to do. Some of us are paid to do it. That's fine. And there was a great interview actually this morning that went out with Gary Neville and Virgil van Dijk, and Virgil.
Lovely tracky top, by the way.
Great tracky top. Virgil has spoken a few times, hasn't he, after games about social media and the impact of that on young players, and how he's quite worried actually for the next generation, because he said, I'm used to it now. But I think for now, kids coming through are so chronically online that it's not really as easy as just saying, oh, well, don't look at that. Don't read the paper. Don't read Ian Doyle's play ratings in the FO.
Well, that's a little bit easier.
Well, so, it's tougher. So I think for me, what I liked about it was that it was a show of respect from the people above Slot to him, I think, to do that. Whatever happens in the long term, whatever your stance is on the manager, I just think both him and the players, in light of what they achieved last season and what they had to go through in the summer, to me, have maybe been a little bit deserving of more respect than they've got at times. But yeah, it's an interesting video, so go and give it a watch if you have a spare half an hour. We're going to get on to talking about Liverpool and Manchester City in a moment, but for now, here's a message from our sponsors at Erdinger. Yeah, thank you very much to Erdinger. We'll get on to the matter at hand then. Liverpool and Manchester City at Anfield on Sunday. Phil, feels like a big one.
It is a big one, yeah. I think there's a lot riding on this in terms of how people will feel about the rest of the season. I think the Champions League is obviously the priority now, and I think a lot of people will want to see Liverpool able to, if not necessarily beat Manchester City in one game, be in a position where they can look like they can beat Manchester City and go toe-to-toe over two legs against any team in Europe and beat them, basically, because I think that is what the season is going to have to be now. We're going to have to, I was going to say we're going to have to win the European Cup. That's not quite how it works. But we want to win the European Cup. We want to win the European Cup, and to want to win the European Cup, and for it to make sense, you have to feel like you're watching a football team capable of it. And Sunday is an opportunity to show that we are capable of doing that. So you've got to go out there, give your absolute best. And we talked about in the first part a couple of games against Manchester City. There've been various games against Manchester City where we haven't won, but you've got to full time and gone, fucking hell, we're good. Like you think of that 2-1 at the Etihad in 18-19. And both 2-2 draws in 21-22. You watched them and you knew that was two of, if not the two best teams in Europe going head to head.
Champions League semi, second leg.
Quarterfinal.
Oh yeah,
quarterfinal. There's that one as well. Liverpool do win that one, so that didn't count for me, what I was saying.
No.
But yeah, but it was about not winning, and so it's fine. But you're able to look at it, you're able to come off the pitch at full time and go, we're good.
Yeah.
And if Liverpool come off the pitch at full time and you can go, okay, we're good and we're in a good position, I would obviously much rather take 3 points. But if you can do that, I think you'd be in a right frame of mind where you can sort of go, right, there's something to play for the rest of the season. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, it feels to me, Andy, this has been the season of false dawns. They've had performances and results where you've gone, that's it, that's what we want to see. That in fact, the last time Liverpool played Manchester City, the week leading up to that, they beat Aston Villa, who were flying at the time, and they beat Real Madrid, and both of them two really good performances. And you think, right, if they can go to City, because I think it was that early November at that point, you sort of think if they could get a result against City, then maybe the title race is back on. And obviously they emphatically don't get a result against Manchester City. So it does feel like there have been false dawns. Even after Marseille the other week, you think going to Bournemouth and then they sort of self-sabotaged and whatever. But I do think for me, the past few weeks, even though results haven't consistently been where you would like them to be, I think there've been positives in terms of you can see the long-term picture with this Liverpool team, which I think the first half of the season you couldn't at all, really. I think you sort of thought, who are all these players? How are they all going to play together? I think now at least you look at, Hugo Ekitike and Florian Wirtz, and you say, right, that could be Liverpool for the next decade, the two of them. I think defensively they've got a little bit better. Milos Kerkez has improved as well. So it feels like now there are green shoots, but there've been so many false dawns you almost don't want to get too excited about it.
Well, that's us down for a 4-0 defeat. No, I think the identity question's a really good one. I think we've all kind of been grasping that's kind of fed into the frustration about what does this Liverpool team look like, what is it looking for? And, you know, we've seen Ekitike and Virgil, but I mean, I only think that's only half the picture as well, because we're discounting our most expensive signing. We've made him where he fits into this, and, you know, you can speculate all you want. The only people who really know what the idea is are the coaching staff and the manager. In regards to big games, I mean, didn't Mikel Arteta call his side the most exciting team in Europe, and over 2 legs this season, we count the league games, we've knocked them out? If you took the league games,
Probably.
1-0. What?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Mikel Arteta. Sorry, I thought
We beat out.
I get what you're saying now.
Oh,
I misunderstood
Jesus.
at first. Sorry, mate.
All right.
I feel like we just need to leave you two in a room
That's
together, and Uber will just go and stay over there.
Oh, God.
I just misunderstood what you said. I'm sorry.
I know, you never do. You never have. Oh, God. Anyway,
It's a spin-off show in there.
so... Anyway, Phil and Andy, bloody hell. Billy Max and Paddy.
I'm on the bus, Patrick.
Sunday, I think it's a massive opportunity, but I also think it's a huge risk.
Yeah.
I think the Liverpool have got a bit of a tailwind behind them. I think the fans, the supporters are all up for it. They can see an opportunity here. City will be coming into the game under a lot of pressure, because I think if they don't get a result, that's pretty much the league done, as much as everyone might say it is. But that'll be like the final nail in.
Yeah, I think so too.
And we've all seen City under pressure. Sometimes Guardiola makes an absolutely insane decision that sometimes works out, sometimes backfires on it. I think I said on the Friday night last night, didn't I? The Friday show, sorry. I don't think it will be a tight game. I genuinely don't. I think it'll either swing one way or the other. And it'll either be wildly brilliant for Liverpool, or we'll come off humbled and licking our wounds. I don't think we'll see a repeat of one of the famous games where both teams have played really, really well, and we've just knocked 7 bells out of each other and we go, all right, shake hands. It is what it is. I think City are vulnerable. I think Liverpool are vulnerable. Before we saw defensive, improvements, Bournemouth was atrocious. But at the same time, there's looked recently and in periods over the season, so Arsenal at Anfield earlier in the season, Arsenal away, where we've looked really solid and they looked like they had a plan and they looked like they believed in it. And I think that's the key to it, is whether what the belief is within the squad and whether they can rally together. I think if Liverpool play to the potential, we've got a really good chance of making a statement win, and a statement win that can build momentum going into the rest of the season. So it's not just the points that we might win. So there's a world in which to agree with Phil.
I like
I know.
See that pig flying over the
No, but there is a mad situation where we come off drawing the game, but maintaining the momentum, because it's been one of the performances that you can look to and go, this is brilliant. And there's also one where we scrape a 1-0 win, but I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah.
And long term, we're actually worse off for that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just about seeing what's on the pitch.
I mean, if you scrape a 1-0 win and it feels a little bit undeserved, and then you go to Sunderland 3 or 4 days later and you get hammered, then obviously that completely nullifies that win. But what you last said about both teams being vulnerable, that's the fascinating thing for me. I mean, obviously we're not neutrals, but if you were a neutral, that's what I'd be tuning into this game for. Because if you think about it, in the Klopp Guardiola era, has there ever been a time when both teams have been below their best? I don't think so.
No.
I think one of them has always been very, very good. And more often than not, it's been both of them. So to see how both of them deal with that fallibility, and City still have a really bad record at Anfield. So they're going to be thinking, well, Liverpool aren't great this season. This can be our chance to win at Anfield with fans in the ground. Whereas Liverpool looking at City thinking, they can't win a second half to save their lives. This is a great opportunity for Liverpool to beat Man City, put some momentum back in our season, and like you were saying, really...
Also, it sounds ridiculous, but it would put Liverpool 5 points behind Manchester City if they beat them. Now,
Exactly.
doesn't necessarily mean you beat them, but it sort of brings that an extra Champions League place into play.
Bigger margin forever.
Keeps Manchester City on their toes, and you're sort of in a position where, Manchester City have presumably still got to play. Have they still got to play Chelsea? Or have they played Chelsea twice?
I think they've got to play Chelsea.
So they've got to go away to Chelsea. They'll have to go away to Chelsea because they've played Chelsea at home, haven't they? So that sort of means that there's there'd be potentially no bad result there, and that would bring that back into place. So it's important for multiple reasons.
I think one of the frustrations for me with Liverpool this season, and everyone has sort of alluded to it already, but I think when you look at the teams that Liverpool are competing against, you know, even Arsenal to an extent, but you know, I think Arsenal on the whole have been the best team purely just because they've had structure in a way.
You call them least bad.
Yeah, but I mean, to credit to them, you know, they're probably going to win the league, and over sort of the last few years, you can't say it's not really deserved. I don't think, as much as it might pain.
Oh, you can.
So, you know, taking Arsenal out of the equation, but even them to an extent, you know, Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester United, Aston Villa. I think if you put Liverpool against all of those teams, I still think Liverpool have a better team, a better 11 than most of those other teams. And I think Manchester City included in that. You know, I think Mo's mentioned there about them maybe not being at the usual level, and they haven't been. You know, that Manchester City a couple of years ago, if they'd have been 6-7 points behind Arsenal, you'd have said, right, there's 100% an opportunity for them to capitalise. They can rattle off. Whereas now, I just don't think this iteration of Manchester City can do that, which I think is why Arsenal will win ultimately. But I just think Liverpool have shown, there's been enough flashes from Liverpool, I think, in the last few weeks where I've thought this has the makings of a really good team. And I just think the frustration is they haven't always shown that. But I still think, you know, if I had to build an 11 out of all of those players from all of those clubs, I still think there'd probably be the most Liverpool players in, excluding Arsenal from that.
Yeah. I think.
But yeah.
I think you're right. I think the weird thing about this season is that it's not been like a consistent level of bad.
Yeah.
Like there've been performances where you've gone, that was quite good, I enjoyed that. Or
But there's been performances within performances as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's just been a lot of what Liverpool have done this season has been shooting themselves in the foot. Ultimately, you think of the first goal at Bournemouth and then the inability to put the ball out of play. That's 2-0 off the back of one decision, basically, right? That wound me up. There's the Leeds game where it was done, it was finished, and then Canate gives a penalty away. That's, you know, well, I'm not saying we would have gone on to win the Bournemouth game, but the way the game started, we probably could have won that Bournemouth game. I thought we played quite well the first 25 minutes.
And then they get it back to 2-2 as well.
That's another 5 points. That's 5 points. It's like
Fulham away.
Quite a lot. There's Fulham away. There's just so many little things that have you pulling your hair out because you know that they're capable of better. It's if you're watching it and going, wow, this is just eternally terrible and has been for 6-7 months or however long it is, you're going, all right, fair enough. But it hasn't been that. And that's why the season has been so incredibly frustrating, because there's been things you can watch and go, well, that was quite good. And there's been 20 minutes in a lot of games where you're like, that was quite good. But there's been 20 minutes of bad in games, and it's just, it's so annoying.
I think the best version of Liverpool are the least thing the Man City wants to see right now.
Yes.
When they are aggressive, when they are front foot, when they can dominate the ball, when they can be physical, when they can sometimes even be direct if they need to be, in a big game with a big atmosphere. If you look at all the games that City have played terribly in, there's been at least one or two of those characteristics in there. Liverpool have been able to do that at their best. And Liverpool have generally shown their best in these big games. So the hope is that, yes, that could be another thing we see on Sunday. The problem is, because of all the things that Phil's just said, we have no real faith that that's exactly what's going to happen. So we've only got hope. So yeah, Liverpool, please, let's all hope that we can do it. But I do think, even though all of these City players have played in big games, Guardiola's been down for so many times, yada, 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 you can talk about how that they've already dealt with that. We need to make it difficult for them. We need to do everything that we can do to make it difficult for them. And I think that this is one of those games where that really does make a difference.
Can I be really reductive?
Go on.
So you know the way Sky do these previews for graphics and they have the key players and the graphics before the game. And if I was going to say, I mean, and it's far more interesting, it's far more deep than that. But for me, if you're having the graphics lined up, on one side you'd have Donnarumma, Bernardo Silva, Haaland. On the other, you'd have Alisson Becker, Florian Wirtz and Ekitike. And they're the three in the game and think, and listen, you're right back and go out and have a nightmare. We don't know that, but if they will be, for me, they're the 3 key players on each side, and they're in direct competition pretty much with each other. And I'm near as damn sure either Donnarumma has a worldie on Sunday, or he plays to his actual real level. And I'll keep
I'm not going to say that you have any kind of goalkeeper bias involved by putting goalkeepers in both of the top 3s, but I would like to throw Ryan Gravenberch in there as well as a really important player, because I do think the improvement.
Who are you dropping out of the 3? You only have 3 on the graphic.
Okay.
Still you there, hasn't he, mate?
No, I'll take Florian Wirtz away.
Oh, no, you can't be doing
No, only because I think that Florian Wirtz is also very important.
Let's get him out.
Also very important, but I just think the way that Gravenberch played in that midfield against Newcastle, that was as important in turning the game.
What about the City graphic?
I know. I think you're all right with that. Bernardo Silva, I think, is vital.
So you're taking the player of the month on the graphic?
I would. Yeah. Actually, I am. I would maybe look at Semenyo, and maybe even almost ahead of him.
Can I just basically say that the final word wasn't anything to do with that. It's just that he's arguing with him now. So. it's not a me thing. It's not a me thing, everyone.
Basically, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to leave these 3 to argue among themselves. But thank you very much to all of them for joining us. Thank you to you for watching and listening. Thank you to Red Bar for playing host to us. And thank you to Erdinger, as usual. We'll see you soon.